Hi, I'm Tavis Smiley. You're listening to a special podcast edition of my show on PBS. To learn more about the guests and the topics in this podcast, visit our website at pbs.org/Tavis Smiley. Mia Kirshner stars on the acclaimed Showtime series The L Word, which begins its 6th and final season next month. She's also out now with a unique project focusing on displaced women and children in some of the world's poorest places. Her new book is called I Live Here. Mia, nice to have you on the program.
Oh, very nice to
I don't know what it is. I've been so fortunate lately. Quincy Jones was in Music Impresario in this seat a few weeks ago. And Quincy had a book that's just a wonderful presentation about his life and legacy. And I get so turned on. I'm a sucker for packaging. I love really unique packaging. So, Jonathan, you got this? This is the book, and it opens up like this. Oh, there's a shot. They got a shot of it. I love my team. They got a shot of it.
Oh, wow.
And it opens up again. So I love this.
Yeah.
So it's a book. I'm going to hold this for a second. So there are 4 books in this packaging. All right, Jonathan, I got you. And I'm going to pull this out. So there are 4 books, and the books come out of these pockets.
That's right.
So it's beautiful packaging. So you tell me what these 4 things are, and we'll talk more about it. But there are 4 books here about displaced women and children in 4 parts of the world, and these are what?
Each book is its own country. So
this is
Chechnya. So this is a book about the displacement in Chechnya and the war in Chechnya, which has been raging for many, many, many years. This book here is about the ongoing genocide of the ethnic Burmese groups.
Right.
And this is about the killings in Juarez and the Mexican government's lack of responsibility they've taken to find out who the killers are. And the last book is HIV in Malawi, as told through a children's story.
Wow.
And kids in prison, kids in a juvenile prison in Malawi who've been lost.
Let me go back to the beginning now, to the genesis. This idea for a project like this generates how?
I mean, I think I was working, and I just found myself that I was just disconnected, kind of, just not connected to my life. I was going to work. I knew that I was fortunate. I knew that I was lucky to have a job, but I just felt like I wasn't contributing anything to my community. And September 11th happened, and I just thought that I can't continue living like this, because I was frightened to the level of my own ignorance in terms of the fact that I don't think I knew about many of the events that led up to September 11th, and I just thought things had to change, and the idea of the book came through that.
Help me understand the juxtaposition, the connect between terrorists hitting our country on September 11th and you're doing a text about displaced women and children.
Because I think that, this is a very complicated issue to talk about, but perhaps I believe that compassion needs to exist in all areas of life. And
what's complicated? I agree with that. What's complicated about that?
Because we're talking about September 11th and the issue of terrorism, which is very complicated. But I think the roots of it lie in poverty. And I think that when people feel ignored, they don't feel heard, I think that that leads to violence. And I think that this book was very much about capturing lost stories and stories that might perhaps vanish if people didn't find them. And so I certainly, my own instinct was just to go into these places and have the displaced write for themselves, because everyone has something to say. You don't have to be in university. You don't have to be a great writer. You just have something to say. And I think that by telling your story, it's a form of empowerment.
Pardon my, how do I want to put this, Mia? Pardon my deliberate naivete as a preface to this question, my deliberate naivete. But why is it you think that we cannot get traction on a real conversation about poverty and about its eradication in this country or anywhere else?
Because it's such an overwhelming issue, and I certainly found that in terms of...
So is the auto industry bailout what we're talking about?
Yeah, but I think that the issue of poverty and violence and sadness is an overwhelming issue. So certainly in doing the research for the book, I was overwhelmed by the amount of just these dry country reports that I was reading from very good human rights organizations. And I think that the only way to engage with this subject matter is to do it on an emotional level, which is how the book was put together. So it was about telling stories that perhaps we can relate to on a very personal level that will engage people to do something about it.
I love books. I suspect obviously you do too. I love it as a medium. Talk to me about the contrast, the comparison between the medium that you're so good at, film, television, stage, and putting something on the pages of a book. I mean, you're used to telling stories visually. And this is visual, but it's a book.
Yeah, I mean, look, in terms of the acting, I sort of feel like Forrest Gump in the whole thing. Like, I just sort of was lucky.
Yeah.
And I sort of, you know, I think there are a lot of women who are a lot better than I am at those jobs, and I'm really lucky to have a job. In fact, my training is in that, and I would say that is
This is closer to you than
I think so.
What we see on the L Word. Yeah.
Well, the L Word, I mean, you know, I'm lucky to have been given that job, paid for this book, and the show is very meaningful to a lot of women. So I'm fortunate in that sense, but I think that my skill set is much more appropriate to do books. But you know, I'm clear that I'm lucky to act, and I enjoy it.
Yeah. Take each of these 4 places.